Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. Tonight we're having a conversation with Brown University grad students who are organizing for better wages and working conditions in their workplace. My guests are Sam Lash, Gabriel Provencher Langlois, and Jeff Feldman. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sam.
Yep, I'm from Vermont, northern Vermont, right on Lake Champlain.
Burlington?
Yep, Burlington, outside Burlington,
Okay.
yep. And I'm a PhD in archaeology, and I'm doing a concurrent Master's of Science in Environmental Science.
Great. Gabriel?
So I'm Canadian. I am from Montreal. I am a second-year student, PhD student in applied mathematics.
And how about you, Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm from Miami. I am a second year in political science.
Great. So why are graduate students organizing a union at Brown University?
Yeah, so there are a lot of reasons. I think for me, I was an undergrad and a master's at University of Michigan. We've had a union for a long time, a graduate student union. When I showed up after my undergrad as a master's student, I had a contract sitting on my desk, and I was like, what is this? And I sort of got really interested and involved in the union there. They're very active and they're very present. And so when I came to Brown for my graduate studies and there was no contract, I was really surprised. I was pretty disgruntled and unhappy because our job is really sort of atypical. We do a lot of different things. We work in a lot of different scenarios. For example, I may be doing my own research and taking my own classes and my own exams, but I'm also teaching undergraduates, other graduate students in the lab and in the classroom, and then I'm also teaching field students where I live with my colleagues and my professors in the field in the Mediterranean. And I work kind of whenever it is necessary. So to have no job security and to be giving that much commitment, it just feels really unbalanced.
It's wholly different than the traditional organizing campaigns that we talk about here where we go to the board. Gabe, what about you?
Sam has said many good points. In my case, it's also really about a negotiated contract. So when I got accepted at Brown University, I received a letter from the director of graduate studies saying, congratulations, you've been admitted. If you come to choose a university, you will be given this amount of stipend. You'll have summer support as well. You will have healthcare support. These are all the list of benefits. So when I came to Brown, I also expected a formal contract that promises that I would indeed get these benefits. But it was not the case. Even though I was treated really well in my department, I want to make sure that this will always be the case during my 5-year studies. 5 years is a very long time. Many things can happen. For example, healthcare at Brown was changed without consent of the students over the summer. A few students were made aware of this at the Graduate Student Council, but otherwise many of us simply didn't know about this. And then one day in August or September, the university emails us this letter saying, oh, by the way, the healthcare provider has changed, so there's this company, and there were a lot of the differences between the old healthcare. So it did not affect me particularly, but I have friends that suddenly had to pay a certain amount of fees for dental healthcare, for example. So this is the kind of surprises we don't want necessarily.
Good. Jeff Feldman from Miami, tell us your story.
Yeah, I think for me, organizing a grad union is about building community because grad student work can be really isolating, as Sam said, long hours, working one-on-one with the professor. That means that, when something comes up like the healthcare change or the tax plan by Trump to sort of raise taxes by about, a couple 100% on grad students, or if you're experiencing sexual harassment or discrimination in the workplace, it's hard to know where to turn. So I think, we are building this union so we can have community. And when we talk to people, these are the kinds of issues we hear about, from discrimination, harassment, people needing support for families, and it's been great to begin to build the community power together.
Funny, in organizing, regardless of a job, it's always the same issues.
Yeah,
all the way
absolutely.
across the board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how is your organizing campaign going? Let me just tell you, first of all, that I was an organizer for many, many years. I worked on the road with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union from 84 to 97, traveling around the country working on organizing campaigns. And then from 97 to a couple of years ago at Local 328 here in Rhode Island. So I know and love organizing. God bless you for the work that you do, doing God's work. Okay, so tell me about your organizing campaign. How's it going?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, why don't we start?
Okay. Oh yeah, I think it's going pretty well. I think we've seen overwhelming support, and we're really happy about moving forward and sort of continuing. I think our union is about graduate students having a greater say at our university, and not just our collective voice being symbolic, but being practical and being legal and mattering on the ground. So I think it's been going really well. We've interviewed hundreds of people, had one-on-one conversation with hundreds of people, and it's been incredibly illuminating. Again, long hours, but really worthwhile. And I think we have a really, really high sort of, I don't want to say approval rate, but a really high rate of, once we have those one-on-one conversations, people are generally almost always supportive. It's a lot of sort of talking to people from different places and different departments. And one of the sort of things that we found really interesting is we talk to people from different cultures where unions mean something different. And so it's also been a really great opportunity for us to talk about what unionization means in the United States. So it's been fun.
Interesting logistics, but then everybody is there on the campus. So it's a question of, when you're in this organizing world, it's a question of contacting people and talking to people face to face. So how are you working out those responsibilities between the 3 years? I'm sure there's okay, you do this building, you do this particular department. How's that working out?
So the way it works, we have many organizers from different departments. So I joined the campaign rather late, actually. Only last November, but essentially I had a friend from physics who came and talked to me along with another student in English literature, and they spoke to me about this, and I decided to join, and now I'm one of the organizers in my own department. So we have organizers in pretty much every department, so it's easy in a way to reach a lot of people because we can reach every discipline at the same time. So it takes some time to do it, but we've gathered already a very large support among students. Yeah.
You having fun, Jeff, with this organizing campaign? Make it fun too.
Yeah, no, it's been really wonderful. I mean, I'm organizing within my department, but I get the chance to meet people from across the university, and I think it's an opportunity to be creative. I think so. It's easy to kind of go through grad school and sort of maintain the status quo, but when you can begin to imagine a new possible future, new things you can win and build together, it's a lot of fun.
So Donald Trump has been elected President of the United States. He's the president. We've got to deal with him. And now, how has his election kind of impacted your organizing efforts?
Donald Trump is adding a sense of urgency to our unionization effort. Donald Trump has already tried to take away rights from immigrants. For example, I have many Iranian friends who are under the travel ban, cannot go back to Iran. I have actually a close friend of mine at the MIT who cannot take professorship position in Canada because if he gets interviewed in Canada, he cannot come back. So this is a real, this impacts a lot of people. Of course, there are immigrants, there are also women, people of color, students, graduate students themselves. So when last semester he proposed this tax bill to remove the exemption on the tax exemption on a tuition fees. This is a big deal. If something like that would pass, it would be over for me and many other students.
Now, presently, the National Labor Relations Board in Washington, D.C. It's always a 5-member board, but there are only 4 members presently on it. There's 2 Obama nominees, and I believe Trump. There's two nominated by Republicans, and Trump is presently putting forth a candidate. So there's no majority. They can't really rule anything right now. But how has Trump's labor board, and it's going to be a pro-management labor board when he does fill that position, how is that impacting your organizing?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't trust Trump's labor board to give us a fair election. That makes things a little bit difficult because we, don't want to necessarily have the NLRB election process. So what that means for us is that we have been negotiating with the university to come up with a pre-election agreement to make sure that we specify the terms of any election we hold, and to make sure that we have to make sure that we don't lose our rights or jeopardize the rights of others. What that means for our organizing is that we need to build a strong majority, not only to show up on the day of the election, but also to continuously put pressure so we get a good deal from the administration, so that they continue to we make sure they recognize the outcome of a fair election.
The actual election process itself, you're signing people up, and then how do we move forward getting a date for election? Give us an idea what's going on there, since we're not going directly with an NLRB.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first we've been meeting for quite a long time, sort of as SUGSE, and SUGSE has a history of
SUGSE?
Yes.
Tell us what that is.
Stand up for grad student
employees.
Love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I was hoping we could do it all in unison.
Great.
So they have a history of political activism on campus in general, and not just for our own rights, but for others. So for the library workers and for sort of a variety of other protests that have gone around campus. And I actually saw them protesting my first year for 6-year funding and for dental insurance. So SUGSE's been meeting for a while, and so the first sort of real steps in the union process were to sort of form these organizers, and then we had mission statements. So this is to sort of build our base of people who publicly support the union, and this is before we went public. And then we went public relatively recently, and we're signing authorization cards where people actually sign. They understand the dues process, and they give us sort of their official support in a public way.
We know who you are because you came to a meeting at the Working Rhode Island and met with a lot of local union officials, and we're all very supportive and wish you well. What else do you think to support? You're organizers now. There's all kinds of things to do with organizing. What about support from the labor community, and even just the community in general? What kind of support can they provide for you? What are you looking for in that particular aspect of organizing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is that because we are graduate students that are only there for 5 to 6 years, we actually don't have a great institutional memory of how unionization has worked at Brown's campus. For example, the 2004 Brown versus decision even is sort of sketchy for some graduate students in terms of memory. And so also how unionization has worked in Rhode Island and in labor unions more recently. And so we really looked to you for the history, for the support, and what works, what doesn't work, exactly what we're dealing with on a local and then regional and national level.
Gabriel, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'll just add that it would be great to, know that the broader labor and Providence community has our back as we go to our election, as well as mentorship and brainstorming to work together and form connections across.
I can tell you that the labor movement in Rhode Island loves a good rally.
Yeah.
So put something together for us, and we'll be really happy with it. Yeah. Now, tell me what's SUGSE? So tell me, what is that again now?
Standing up for graduate students employees.
All right, I'm going to give you 3, and I want you to tell it right to the camera. Right. 1, 2, 3.
Stand up for graduate student employees.
Okay, we'll see you next time on Labor Vision. Good evening. Welcome to Labor Vision. My name is Jim Riley. I'll be your host tonight. Tonight we're having a conversation with members of GAU, Graduates Assistants United from URI. And my guests are Melissa Hoffman and Danielle Dirocco. Yes. Danielle, tell us about the Graduate Assistants United. How did you come into being, and tell us your story.
Sure. So Graduate Assistants United came into being somewhere around 1999, where we started as a cluster of graduate students recognizing some trends that we weren't happy with. We had stipends that hadn't moved upwards in numerous years. We had rapidly increasing student fees every year when our stipends weren't able to keep up with them. And come time, realizing while we were working with the Board of Governors and trying to advocate for ourselves that we weren't getting anywhere. So, with the help of the faculty at the university and the encouragement of President Carruthers at the time, we actually decided that the best move forward would be to unionize. So that was in 2002. We had our first contract within about 8 months of that, and negotiated our second contract, which was a 3-year contract, shortly thereafter.
So, tell us about your membership. What does it look like?
Sure, it looks like the UN.
Looks like the UN?
It does. Scott Malloy has said a whole bunch of times that he feels like he's walked into the General Assembly. We have folks from all over the country, from all over the world. We've actually done maps and mapped out where our members are. It's a stunning array of folks. So we have an incredible amount of diversity in cultural differences. That we have to work together to make sure that we're all not only communicating well, but effectively working together and respecting each other. We have a larger number of teaching assistants than we have research assistants on campus right now, but everyone comes together to make the contract as strong as it can be.
So Melissa, tell us a little something about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a master's student right now. I'm going to be graduating soon, but I became involved with GAU pretty early on in my time at URI, and I thought it was a way to build community and really think globally but act locally. And so it's just been a really great experience to be involved on the executive board as well, and really get into some grassroots organizing.
How many members on your executive board?
We have 7 members on our executive board, and we have a leadership council as well. They're not elected, they're self-appointed to represent the dozens of departments that are on campus as well.
What's the difference between graduate assistants and graduate employees?
Absolutely nothing. That's the same thing.
It is the same thing. Okay. Now you have an interesting membership. You know, most people, you've got even trades or different unions. It's a fairly constant membership, but yours is anything but constant. You've got graduate assistants and graduate employees coming into the union every few years later, leaving the union, coming in, coming back. So there's a situation of, I mean, I've always been a great believer of always educating your membership, regardless of who they are or what they do, all the time, as to what's going on in the union, and to keep everybody excited about being a member of the union. So how do you deal with that continued kind of turnover that goes on at URI?
Yeah, so like you said, it means that we are constantly having to do education campaigns and just trying to keep all of our members in the loop. We have to be trying to organize 24/7. And for us, what's really important is that face-to-face interaction. You know, we try to get some of the really involved members to visit all of the departments. We do that at the beginning of every year, make sure everyone has signed our membership cards, and just try to make sure that they know why we're there and what our function is as a union for graduate students. So we're also always trying to plan events and different engagement activities to get people to come together as a community, and then also learn about what we need to do and how we can fight for our rights as workers, as a collective.
Excellent. Sounds like you know what you're doing over there. Danielle, you want to follow up on that a little bit?
Sure. To build right off of what Melissa was saying, we do these big outreach events a couple of different times a year where we fan out on campus. We take about 6 weeks at the beginning of the semester. We identify where our members are. We go to their department orientations, so we meet them where they are. And then we go to the graduate school orientation, so we meet them as a big group, and then we go and do office visits right afterwards. So they see us a number of different times, and often have a social event towards the end of that as well. So there's a way for everyone to have numerous opportunities to initially engage. If we're not talking to people within the first 6 weeks of the semester, it's a much harder communication channel to open from that point forward. They become overwhelmed with the work that they're doing. They become immersed in their department. And building value at that moment right up front is a key to our success overall. But obviously that's just one step, right? You can't stop there. You have to continue to visit. You have to continue to make sure people have opportunities to engage.
Member to member, worker to worker has always proven to be the best form of education for your membership. So what's your most, I'm sure you must do all different kinds of events. You touched on a few things. What do you think is your most effective organizing event?
Yeah, so I think one of our monthly events is called Pub Talks.
Pub Talks?
Yeah. And,
I've been doing that for about 50 years.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, so essentially we pick a bar around our area and we come together in an informal format and we describe our research to each other in 5 minutes or less without using jargon. So it's a way to kind of, practice talking about your research, but also come together as grad assistants on a monthly basis. And we have a pretty good turnout at those events. And, talking about not just our research, but also what's going on with the union.
Great.
Yeah, you can sneak in union education in between, like that becomes one of the talks that occurs. And the other piece with Pub Talks that's worth mentioning is the initial idea with Pub Talks came after the Trump administration came into power, and all of the attacks that were occurring on science and funding really directly, and the international community as well, directly impacted so many people in our unit that we realized we've got to take the time to not only learn how to communicate the value of what we're doing with each other, but to the greater community overall. Mm-hmm. So the vision that we started with was, let's broaden this out. How do we put our feet in our larger community and show, not only demonstrate value, but invite people in to the process that we're going through. So we have a better, more highly educated community and a better engagement with the people we're around.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about challenges. Grad assistants, I'm sure you have certain specific, unique kind of challenges that you deal with on a regular basis. Tell us about some of what you would normally see as a challenge to you in the workplace.
Yeah, so I guess as a union as a whole, we kind of talked about that high turnover rate. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something. And a lot of times this is people's very first experience with a union. For me, I really didn't know what a union was or how it functioned before I came to URI, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing that there's a union. And I think that's the case for many people coming into this situation. So we're essentially, Danielle said this earlier, we're growing organizers and trying to educate people. But when we're talking about just day-to-day challenges, I think one of the biggest things is kind of this striking the right power balance between the advisor and the graduate employee and student. It's kind of difficult for people to differentiate, are we students, are we employees? And the thing is that we're both. But we do a lot of work for the university. We're teaching classes, we're doing research, and we're doing administrative work as well. So it really is important for us to have that recognition as employees in addition to students. But when advisors are holding our funding and things get tricky with advisors, it's really important to have our union as kind of a backup, and we're going to be there whenever our graduate assistants need us.
Give us an idea of what the graduate assistant actually does on a regular day-to-day basis, and then you can talk to us also about your challenges as well that you see.
Sure. So a graduate assistant on campus is there are three categories. They're either a research assistant, a teaching assistant, or an administrative, I'm going to call them a departmental assistant. Mm-hmm. Okay. Research assistants are actively engaged in research at the university. They are the folks who are in the labs. They are the ones who are doing the late hours, that are working this experiment with a particular faculty member who may have a specialty in their field, and so they're learning through them, but they're putting genuine labor into the process, into the relationship. A teaching assistant can look a few different ways. In some departments, teaching assistants are legitimately doing the same thing that faculty members do in terms of teaching. The courses are theirs, they're designing the curriculum, they have designed their own syllabus, they are teaching their class, they are grading their class, it's all theirs. Mm-hmm. And in other departments, you have more traditional teaching assistantships where it's you have your faculty member teaching a large, let's say 200-person lecture, and 5 or 6 teaching assistants are assigned to take clusters of those groups and have recitation sessions throughout the week and support the grading necessary and the secondary education piece, right? You learn in a big class, but then you got to break it down and have a better fluency on the topic and the opportunity to ask questions you can't ask with 200 people. And administrative assistants, there are very few of them, but overall they tend to do a departmental support role or conference planning or structural support. In terms of challenges overall that I see, I think not only striking a balance between the advisor and the graduate assistant, but also thinking about ensuring that graduate assistants are able to have something like leverage in that conversation. If your advisor holds all of your funding in their hands, or if your relationship hinges on having a positive relationship with that advisor or them perceiving you well for you to continue on your career, right? This is your career choice to go to graduate school, so this has to be a winning situation for you. If that gets complicated, we need to be able to step in and advocate and have a grievance process that shields the graduate assistant from retaliation.
Okay, great. Now, you have a contract expiring at the end of August.
I do.
What are your negotiating priorities? How's it going?
So it's going. We've been working hard on research to make sure that we are coming to the table as well informed and educated as we can possibly be. The primary objective is always going to be wages. We are consistently fighting the poverty line, and as the cost of living in Kingston is particularly high, surprisingly so for a rural area. So ensuring that our wages are able to keep up, that our insurance covers our actual full body. Right now, we have insurance that doesn't cover dental or vision. So I don't really think you want a teaching assistant grading your papers with the toothache, or if they can't see the pages, it's a problem, right? So, holistic actual healthcare options need to be on the table for grad assistants right now. They're not. Last but not least, I would say, I think student fees overall are probably the most important piece of the puzzle on creating a balance for a graduate assistant. You start graduate school, you are expected to pay graduate student fees, right? So we as grad assistants get paid, and then we have to hand it directly back out to the university. How do you pay your rent on that month? You can't. There's no way to do this, right? So people start taking student loans out. They put things on their credit cards. We have members on food stamps to try to make ends meet. So trying to stay ahead of that and ensuring that we don't have a rentier campus is essential for our success.
Well, I wish you good luck in negotiations. Thank you for coming here today. I've got a feeling there's going to be a few meetings at Muse Tavern regarding your negotiations coming up real soon. And we wish you well, and thank you both for coming here today. It's been a delight to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for Labor Vision tonight. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.